Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. And we had the press conference yesterday. Of course, we spoke yesterday about the Keith Thurman, Brock Jarvis fight for Sydney on March the 12th. No limit, main event, pay-per-view. And the responses yesterday were, well, interesting. A lot of people saying you can stick the $70 where the sun don't shine. But look, I must admit, I was a little bit in shock yesterday morning because I only just sort of read about it once I was on the walk. But while I don't necessarily, well, not necessarily, I 100% don't think it's a big fight, I do applaud No Limit in their thinking. So what they're obviously looking at and what they need to look at is that Tszyu and Nikita Tszyu aren't 100% bankable products. I mean, when they're on and firing, yes, they are bankable as far as pay-per-views and that goes, sales go. But we don't know we're hoping we know the future of Tim, that he'll come back and get a couple of wins and maybe make another run at the world level. But there's no guarantees, and he's coming off two heavy losses, while the second one especially being a heavy loss. So there's no sort of guarantees on investing in him going forward. Let's hope he does get back to where he was and we have those big events and everything else. And as for Nikita, well, certainly no guarantee that he will even make it to world level. So I actually applaud the fact that No Limit, with the commitments to Fox Sports and main event, having to look laterally and having to look outside the square for quality content. So they've looked at this fight. Now, this is, again, I'll say it from yesterday, the last fight I would ever expected them to make, but I don't mind it. They've looked at it and thought, well, opportunities there to get a big name in Keith Thurman, even though he's had one fight in 5.5 years and none in the last 3. And Brock Jarvis, who was out for a couple of years and has just come back and had that, let's just say, uneventful win over Adrian Rodriguez. So they're banking on that, but I don't mind. The fight is just from left field. Brock Jarvis, the unknown from Australia, against Keith Thurman, a former two-time world welterweight champion. So again, I don't mind it. They have to think this way, because you think about it, if they didn't think a little bit outside the square, we would be sitting here thinking, what is going on? They've got no fighters, they've got no events, they've got nothing outside the zoos. We might be looking at sort of April or May before we get a pay-per-view for the year. So yeah, I think it's just something they had to do, and I don't mind it. I know that the fight's had a lot of backlash, and again, people saying they're not paying the $70, and I get that. It's a free country. You don't have to pay it if you don't want to. But again, I think with their business model, they have to come up with these different things. And it also poses the question of what will they do next? Who else have they got in the stable that we suddenly might see a fight from left field? I think it's exciting, I really do. And especially now they're working with Ace Boxing. There's lots of different sort of connotations of fights that we could see. And if the Brock Jarvis and Keith Thurman fight is a success, I don't think they're going to get a lot of pay-per-views between me and you, but let's say they do, and it is a success in their eyes, and maybe Brock does better than what a lot of people think he will. I don't know how the fight's going to go, to be honest. You've got two complete sort of different characters, haven't you? You've got Brock Jarvis, who we know he can fight. He's a very talented fighter, but has had one big fight in his career and was knocked out in 1 round, even though it was just one of those lightning bolt shots that could have probably knocked anyone out regardless of who they were. But so he's had that one big fight, ended in a very, very disappointing loss, but he has got talent. We've seen that in the past. But then you've got Keith Thurman, who we know he's got talent, we know he's got the goods, but just so inactive, so injury plagued or injury prone as well. So what are we going to get? How much has he faded? Hasn't fought for 3 years. Although that last win that he had in his last fight was against Mario Barrios, the current WBC welterweight champion. So we know, as I said, he's got the goods. But what are we going to get? I don't know. But I like the fact that No Limit are doing it. And as I said, who knows if it is a success in their thinking, what fights we might get down the track. Are we going to see a Liam Wilson? I know he's looking at a Navarrete, but we're going to see him, just go in against. I'm just trying to think of a name, just a big name from the past. I can't think of anyone now, but you get where I'm coming from anyway. That we might see some of these fighters on their roster. They go, you know what? Well, we need to see whether they've got it or not. Let's bring out a big name and just throw them in and see what happens. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Anyway, but the press conference was yesterday, and look, it was a little bit awkward, if I'm being honest. I really respect Brock for getting up there and sort of trying to go head-to-head with Keith Thurman, but I think the first round has got to have gone to Keith Thurman. I must admit, when Brock Jarvis tried to sort of do the trash talking with Keith Thurman, I thought, Brock, mate, I get what you're trying to do, and I don't know whether people have sort of been in his ear to maybe talk it up a little bit, but he was so far out of his depth as far as that aspect of it went. It was ridiculous. So it started off okay. I thought both guys were very respectful to start with. I thought Brock spoke really, really well, considering the stage he was now on, main event of a pay-per-view, and I thought he handled it really well. Keith Thurman, I thought, was actually quite reserved at the start and spoke really, really well and calmly and precisely. And then I can't remember what sort of happened, and then that sort of went back and forth. Not that it was heated or as on as some of the other press conferences we've seen, but the press conferences. Well, really, it wasn't a press conference; it was more of an announcement more than anything. But when they sort of started to trade a few words, I thought, Brock, just stop there, mate. You're not that guy. You're a lot of things, but you're not that guy. And I just thought Keith Thurman took him to school in the trash talking argument, and which he's done a lot of times, by the way, no disgrace in that. But that was probably the only thing I thought was a little bit awkward. But again, apart from that, I thought Brock spoke really, really well. He was respectful of Keith. Keith was respectful of him. He did admit that he had to do a bit of research on who Brock Jarvis was, which is not something you see in a fight of the calibre of Keith Thurman. They've actually got to jump on Google and BoxRec and YouTube and have a look at who this guy is that they're going to fight. So that was a little bit amusing. But look, it's going to be good. I had Michael Zarafa on, of course, and a little bit disappointing. They spent about 30 seconds on the Pacquaio A fight, and then we're straight into the Tszyu talk. And look, Michael, I thought he spoke pretty well, to be honest. He did what he had to do and said what he had to say, and I didn't mind the fact that he said, you know what, I'm done with the Tszyu. They got to grow a pair or something. He said about Tim and this sort of stuff. And look, you could tell he was getting a little bit fed up, a little bit impatient about the whole thing. And I think he's also probably a little bit tired of every single time they put a microphone in front of his face, it's about Tszyu or maybe Nikita Tszyu. So I understand it. I think he just wanted to talk about the job at hand, so I get that. But surely the interviewers had something else to ask him than 3 to 4 minutes of just Tszyu questions and 30 seconds on Pacquaio A. So I'm sure he's a little bit more interesting than that. Maybe they could have talked about what happens after this fight without mentioning the Tszyu and see if they could get something else out of him except, well, Tszyu said this and he beat you in a street fight. What are your thoughts? And of course, Michael just goes with that. So I think we can just find something a little bit different than that, guys. Ben Damon's always a very good interviewer, but they just seem to go back to the same old with Michael, and the same as Tim. Do you blame someone like Tim for just saying what he said about, look, enough with Michael Zarafa, I'm not fighting and be done. That's it, no more. Because all they do is ask him about that. So I'm sure we can think of some better questions to ask than that. And I think they had our old mate Peter Bedell on, and he struggles a little bit too with the questions as well. But I'm not going to lay into Peter Bedell today, although he didn't call Manny Pacquiao the other day Manny Pacquaio. Yes, this is what we're dealing with. And actually, wasn't that the other? I saw an article the other day, just to change subject. I can't remember who it was. It was I can't remember. It was some journalist I haven't sort of seen before, but he was mentioning the Keith Thurman and Brock Jarvis fight. Again, this is how much research these guys do and how much they actually know about boxing. He said that, first of all, Keith Thurman was the former, I think, lightweight world champion. Then he said that Keith Thurman, with his destructive one-punch knockout power, I don't know what Keith Thurman is watching, but Keith Thurman certainly ain't a devastating one-punch knockout artist. So I just think they just make half of this shit up and maybe jump on the websites in the morning to see what info they can get. One other thing that was actually funny, and they didn't actually address it on the press conference or the fight announcement, is that Keith Thurman said, yeah, we know he was unsuccessful in his world title shot, obviously referring to the Liam Pacquaio fight, and no one sort of addressed it, but you could almost hear the cringe in the room, because obviously it wasn't a world title fight, and it was just for one of those probably regional belts or something. So look, I think Keith Thurman's probably got to do a little bit more research on Brock. He 100% just thinks this is a comeback fight, a tune-up fight, a free trip to Australia, whatever it is. But on the other hand, Brock Jarvis looks at it as an opportunity, and if he can get past Keith Thurman, then who knows? Look, still wouldn't rate, depends on what Thurman turns up, of course. I still wouldn't rate it as, one of those career-defining wins, but it gets him in the mix of people knowing who he is and maybe talking about him. And even on the site yesterday, a lot of pushback about the fight itself. Who is this guy and everything? But at least they're all starting to research Brock Jarvis. Who is this guy? I'm sure his BoxRec profile went bananas yesterday with people looking up his record from all over the world. So anyway, I thought it was good. Afterwards, I saw Jay McAllister's interview with Jeff Fennick, which was very interesting. Now, I don't know if you saw it. If you haven't, check out Jay McAllister's boxing page. Jeff Fennick didn't look exactly overexcited about the fight. I know he's probably trying to tone it down a bit, because Jeff can get a little bit excited sometimes and say things maybe he regrets, but he just said, look, this guy's probably, I know they've got to talk it up a little bit as well, but he did say, look, the more I watched of Keith Thurman, the better he gets, and he's, in the top 10 fighters over the last decade or something. And so I don't know whether he's just trying to talk it up a lot or he genuinely believes it, but yeah, he didn't seem overly confident, and he sort of changed the subject. They did talk about the Tszyu situation as well, what he's up to, and Sam Goodman as well. But as always, Jeff never short of a quote. It was really good. But yeah, I'm not sure whether this would have been the fight he would have taken if he had 100% say in the whole thing. I know he has a lot of say, of course, but I've got a feeling that his dad, Brock's dad, and No Limit are the ones sort of pushing for this fight. But hey, at some stage, you've got to see whether you got it or not. You've got to see whether you're up to it. He's had that one shot at Liam Pacquaio, and I'm sure he's a lot better than that, by the way. He just got caught cold. I think he would have done a lot better in that fight if he hadn't got nailed so early, and I think he can fight, but we're about to find out exactly what he's got. Now, Keith Thurman's not a big puncher, so I don't think he's going to get knocked out or hurt badly like he has been in some of his most recent fights. But we're going to see talent-wise what he's got, and I'm looking forward to it. And again, I applaud No Limit for thinking outside the square and doing something different for us boxing fans. Another interview they had yesterday that I watched was the Tszyu, it might have been the day before, the Tszyu interview, just about what he's up to again. And look, he's saying that he wants to step straight back in with a top 10 opponent. And I think the interviewer might have even mentioned it, that, Tim, why do you want to jump straight back in with a top 10 guy? We know you're a warrior, we know you love to fight the best, but is it the right move for your career? And Tim was adamant that he wants a top 10 fighter right from the get-go. I admire Tim for the mindset, but for business-wise or business strategy-wise, I don't agree with it. If ever a fighter needed a tomato can to come back against, it is Tszyu. And I would not begrudge him one bit. And I'm sure a lot of boxing fans wouldn't either. Just come in and just fight a spud, Tim. No one's going to care. Maybe the fact that they want it to be a pay-per-view, maybe they need someone of note, but surely they've got to be looking at the big picture with Tim. He needs a win, regardless who it is. Just get him in with anyone. As long as they're not a threat, just put him in there and just get a win under his belt. Because I think Tim's thing is more mental. That's going to be his biggest challenge. That was actually the other thing that Jeff Fennick said as well. He pulled no punches, and it's surprising that, because he is close to the Tszyu, of course, and he said, what's this shit they're talking about going to Russia? And when I first heard about the Russia thing, I thought, that's not a bad way to look at it. But Jeff, as always, just nailed it when he said, what's his shit about Russia? It's not about getting in better mental and physical condition. It's working on the deficiencies and working on your skills, and I didn't mind it. He's not a fan of Igor, his uncle Igor. He thinks he should move on to someone else, but he's more sort of focused on addressing the faults in his game, because Jeff probably quite rightly said, look, there's nothing wrong, never anything wrong with his fitness. He's always superbly in shape. He's always super confident, but he's lacking in a lot of his skills, and that's what they should be working on. Forget going up and training like I was going to say a Spartan. It's not a Spartan, one of those Russian warriors up in the snow or something. He can do that, but that's not what he needs. He needs to work on his deficiencies. So I didn't mind it. I really liked what Jeff Fennick had to say, as always. But yeah, Tszyu, he's just said that, yeah, he wants to come back against a top 10 guy, and he wants to have another crack at it. Again, not really interested in Michael Zarafa. But the rumour mill, by the way, too, I'm not sure whether I've mentioned this in any of the recent videos, is April 6th. Looks like will be the date for that return of Tszyu. It will be most likely in Sydney on a Sunday afternoon, so it'll be beamed straight back into America. That will be his return, and again, we don't know about the opponent yet. And also with Nikita, it looks like it might even be pushed back to May for Nikita to come back. That's the rumours getting around, although I did hear someone else say it could be late March. I'm not sure, but you would think they would have to spread all these events out nicely to get maximum dollar out of us boxing fans. They wouldn't want Tim and Nikita only a couple of weeks away, I wouldn't think, in pay-per-views. I don't think that'd go down well, but April 6th looks like it is the date for Tim's return. What else was going on yesterday? I did see at the press conference for Inoue for his fight with is it Tszyu Kim? I think that's his name. Fighting Inoue. He was asked actually by Tazzy Brown the comparisons between Inoue and Manny Pacquiao, and he actually rated Inoue higher than Pacquiao, which really surprised me. It really surprised me, because as much as I love Inoue and what he's done, I don't think his achievements are anywhere near what Manny Pacquiao's done, although he did make a good point in that the difference between the two is that Manny Pacquiao lost fights on the way up of winning his world titles through all the divisions. Inoue hasn't. The one thing I would say about that, though, is look at the level of competition they fought. I mean, when Manny Pacquiao went up, you know, he's fighting the likes of Morales and these types of guys, and come here, man, and Marquez, and not so much actually with Marquez, was it? Although he was it featherweight up to lightweight, whatever it was. But again, all that aside, look at the level of competition he's fighting in those fights, and it's not Inoue's fault. He hasn't had the Morales and Barreras and Hattons and Cottos and all these sorts of guys, and De La Hoya's the fight. I get that, but I just think the level of competition really sets them apart. And don't forget, Manny Pacquiao, world champion in 8 divisions, and went right through, fought and beat, lost a few of course, but beat the majority of guys he fought. And again, it's not Inoue's fault, but I just don't think yet. Now, if he could be rated in that category, I think, look, if he goes up and wins the featherweight world title, again, look, if he goes up and beats Nick Ball, I mean, is that really like going up and beating a Hatton or a De La Hoya or a Barrera or one of those types of guys? I don't really think so. And Marquez, of course. So, yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts about it. But for me at the moment, Manny Pacquiao, I don't think Inoue comes close. Not to say that if they fought each other, who might win, that's a totally different ball game. But I think you've got to look at resumes. And I think Manny Pacquiao has him covered. Maybe if Inoue wins the 126 and maybe goes to 130, but again, who's there to fight? Who's one of those greats that he could fight? There's none. And this seems to be the norm these days, doesn't it? That a lot of the great fighters don't necessarily have other great fighters to fight. There's a few exceptions, of course, Tyson Fury and Usyk and Beterbiev and Bivol and these types of guys, but guys like Inoue, they just don't have the Morales or Barrera or one of these types of guys they can go up and fight to really prove the stature and the standing in the sport. But anyway, I'm sure history will tell the tale. The other interesting thing that Bob Arum also said, he was asked the other day about who would win out of Terence Crawford and Floyd Mayweather, and surprisingly again, he said Terence Crawford would beat Floyd Mayweather. Now that's a very juicy fight, isn't it? I'm not sure what to sort of think about that. Off the cuff, I think Crawford would have a fantastic chance of beating Floyd Mayweather, but something that I might have a little bit more of a think about and maybe even do an episode on. We've got to get back to the dream fights at some stage when I have a bit more time, but that's a fascinating one. But yeah, it was interesting to see that Bob Arum thought that Terence Crawford would beat Mayweather, and I think one of the main things was that Terence Crawford being what is it, when left and right hand, ambidextrous or whatever the hell it's called, left equally proficient with from the southpaw stance or the orthodox stance. He can make you pay and punish you with either hand, either stance. So, and he reckons that would be the key in beating Mayweather. So yeah, some interesting thoughts from the 93-year-old Bob Arum. So and that fight, speaking just of that Inoue fight with Kim, that is tomorrow night, isn't it? So look forward to that. I'm not sure I'm going to watch it though, because they want $50 to watch it on Main Event. Now, we love Inoue, but I'm certainly not paying $50 to watch a fight with a guy that he should beat very easily. So if you want to watch it, then yeah, jump on Main Event. But anyway, guys, look, I think that's going to do it for today. Got to jump back in the car and get on the road this morning, so I'll head back and get on with it. But all the best for today, and we will catch you tomorrow.